Joining us now is the senior senator from Virginia, the vice chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, the committee that is responsible for this mammoth and landmark report today, Senator Mark Warner. Senator Warner, it's a real pleasure to have you with us tonight. Thank you for taking the time.
Rachel, thank you for having me. It's been a long 3.5 years. And for your viewers, this is actually volume 5 of the report. And all of them have been uniformly bipartisan. We've had 14 out of 15 votes on every one of these reports. And I think it's important that the American public read it, draw their own conclusions, and make sure it never happens again.
Did you guys put out a 1,000-page report on the second day of the DNC because you're actively trying to kill MSNBC hosts with workload?
We put out 1,000 pages because we finished this report back in May, and it took the intelligence community that long to go through their redactions of what they would allow us to release or not. I would have hoped it would have been out earlier. But it is out, and it is now part of the historical record. It goes along with what we saw about Russian interference with social media. It goes along with what we saw about Russian interference into our election system. And what's so important is not only what you went through, but the fact that the intelligence community 10 days ago said Russia and other nations are back in 2020 trying to do it again.
The Russian ongoing interest in this president, and as the intelligence community has publicly said, their interest in making sure that he is reelected has become kind of a theme song in terms of us trying to assess the president's motives for a lot of his harder to explain behavior, particularly with regard to Russia, but also around a lot of foreign policy and intelligence issues over time. I feel like from the biggest possible picture here, part of what the president has learned, part of what the president's political supporters have learned, is sort of no matter what they get caught out for when it comes to Russia and knowingly assisting in Russia's efforts and accepting their help and asking for more of it and trying to capitalize on it, they never get in trouble for any of it. And so I feel like they're just becoming more blatant about the fact that they're okay with Russia interfering on their behalf.
Well, I do think it is unfortunate, to say the least, that 3.5 years later, the United States Congress, the House has passed bills, but the Senate, under Mitch McConnell's, not even voted on a single bill that said, if Russia chooses or their agents choose to put up advertisements on Facebook, there ought to be the same disclosure requirements that if they advertise on MSNBC. Or, how about this for a law that shouldn't be a big stretch? If a foreign government offers you dirt in a presidential campaign, the appropriate response ought to be tell the FBI, don't say thank you. We couldn't even vote on those additional rules. And that, I think, makes us less secure. Now, we are safer because election officials of both parties across the country have stepped up. We are safer because, while not perfect, the social media companies are doing better at trying to ferret out some of the most abusive misinformation. We are better because literally hundreds of counterintelligence professionals are doing their job. But the fact that this White House refuses to acknowledge what the intelligence community uniformly said 10 days ago, that Russia is back, now China and Iran are also trying to interfere in our democracy, should give us all a little bit of pause, whatever, it's 77 days before election.
Senator, the narrative in this, it's too bad it's 1,000 pages because there's sections of it that read like a thriller. Can you just take us inside the findings about how Paul Manafort, who in American presidential campaigns, the campaign chairman, is the most senior person, and to say it's not normal to be running plays for Russia is an understatement. I worked on 3. Nobody talked to any foreign government. But he's basically described in the text as either a witting or unwitting agent of a now known Russian intelligence official. Explain how that operated and explain. Andrew Weissmann of the Mueller campaign said there were things like that maybe weren't even known to Mueller. How did you get to that? What did that look like? And how is that something that doesn't have everyone's hair on fire?
Well, this is 3.5 years of work, a very bipartisan group of staff members. And I want to give a shout out to the former chair, who's Richard Burr, who stayed to this bipartisan agreement to try to get all the facts out. And now Marco Rubio is trying to continue in that stead. And we said we were going to let the American public decide how they want to read this. This is, again, volume 5. We've done other reports, bipartisan, on social media, on election security. And the amazing thing is, the individual that Manafort dealt with has been mentioned in the popular press as potentially being involved in some of the Russian disinformation efforts going on. So I think this should be, about, as Americans, who do we want to have decide our elections? It should be Americans. We may disagree with Mr. Trump and his supporters, but it ought to be Americans deciding amongst each other, not outside foreign entities trying to weigh in and tip the scales one way or the other. And I think we've still got a responsibility. I've still got a responsibility to push the intelligence community even more to continue to educate the American public, not so much about what happened in 2016, but what happened in 2020. These other nations are still trying to interfere because, in a sense, the soft underbelly of democracy is our systems. And if you can undermine people's confidence in our system, and unfortunately, out of the White House, we've seen this president talk about not being willing to perhaps go by the results of the election, or, as the earlier story had pointed out, an unprecedented assault from the post office. So my hope would be that people of goodwill of both parties would look at what happened in 2016, look at this bipartisan report, read it, and then like to make sure 2020 we don't have it happen again. I'll push the intelligence community to come clean with all their information, and then Americans ought to make sure we decide this election, not foreign entities.
Senator, one brief last question for you. There's been public reporting that your committee believes, and in fact referred to the Justice Department, that a number of people associated with the Trump campaign may have lied to your committee over the course of your investigation. I know that you're going to be reluctant to talk about criminal referrals, but do you believe that there were people who lied to your committee, and should they be prosecuted?
Rachel, the chairman of the committee said you shouldn't lie to our committee. I'm not going to talk about referrals, what happened or not. That's not appropriate. And again, we turned it all, whatever happened was turned over to the Justice Department.
Vice Chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Virginia Senator Mark Warner. Senator Warner, thanks for helping us understand this. After the DNC is over, I think there's going to be a second round of focus on what you guys have done here. I look forward to talking to you again about it then, sir.
Thank you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.